There are moments in life when everything feels uncertain, when the doors you prayed for stay closed, when your heart feels restless, and when your efforts seem invisible. You look around and wonder, why isn't anything working? But it's in those very moments that Allah is whispering to your heart, trust me. Sometimes Allah withholds what you want to give you, what you need. Sometimes He delays not to punish you, but to prepare you. We live in a world that worships control, where we are taught to have plans, deadlines, and clear paths. But faith begins where control ends. It begins the moment you say, why Allah? I don't know how this will work out, but I trust that you will make a way. When Prophet Musa, A.S., stood before the Red Sea with Pharaoh's army behind him, every logical path said it was over. But Allah made a way, not through logic, not through human planning, but through a miracle. The sea split open, and that's exactly how Allah operates in the lives of believers. When you are cornered by fear, when your heart feels trapped, He can split open a path where none exists. The problem is, we often want to see the miracle before we trust. We want the clarity before we surrender. But Allah says in the Quran, and whoever puts their trust in Allah, then He is sufficient for them. Surah At-Talaq 65:3. He doesn't ask you to understand His plan. He asks you to trust Him through the plan. Because what you see as delay, He sees as perfect timing. What you see as loss, He sees as protection. What you see as an ending, He sees as a new beginning written in wisdom. Peace doesn't come from having everything figured out. It comes from knowing that even when you don't, Allah does. Worry is heavy because it's a burden your heart was never meant to carry. You weren't created to control. You were created to rely. You weren't created to predict. You were created to surrender. When you let go of the how, you make space for the ooh and the ooh. Allah never fails. Look back on your life. How many times did you think you wouldn't make it, yet somehow you did? How many times did Allah open doors you didn't even knock on? That wasn't coincidence. That was divine care. You didn't make it here by chance. You made it here by mercy. So stop worrying about tomorrow. Tomorrow is already written by the one who loves you more than you can imagine. Instead, focus on being present today in prayer, in patience, in trust. When your heart trembles with fear, remind it, my Lord is with me. He will guide me. That was the faith that parted the sea. That is the faith that will part your pain. Allah's plan is not late, it's layered. Every delay, every disappointment, every detour is shaping you into the person who can hold the blessing when it comes. You may not understand now, but one day you'll look back and say, if it hadn't happened that way, I wouldn't have become who I am. So breathe. The one who took care of you yesterday will take care of you today. And the one who takes care of you today will take care of you tomorrow. Let go of the worry. Trust the one who makes a way out of no way. Faith begins where control ends, because the heart that constantly tries to control everything never truly rests. We live in a world that teaches us to plan every step, to predict every outcome, and to prepare for every possible scenario. But life is not a formula. It is a divine script written by Allah with wisdom far beyond what we can comprehend. When you try to control every detail of your life, you leave no space for faith to breathe. You become consumed by the illusion that your efforts alone determine your destiny. But the truth is, there comes a point in every soul's journey where control must be surrendered and trust must take its place. Faith is not built in the moments when everything makes sense. It is built in the moments when nothing does. When you've done all you can and the situation still doesn't change, that is where faith begins. It begins when your heart whispers, I can't do this alone. And your soul answers, but Allah can. The human heart finds its deepest peace not when it understands, but when it trusts. The need to control comes from fear, fear of loss, fear of uncertainty, fear of the unknown. Yet faith transforms that fear into surrender. It whispers to the trembling heart, you don't have to know what's next. You just have to know who holds the next moment. When we release control, we don't lose power. We discover real power. Control is heavy. It makes you anxious, restless, and tired. It keeps you stuck in endless cycles of what if and why not. Faith is freedom. It lightens the soul because it hands over the burdens you were never meant to carry. You were not created to orchestrate every outcome. You were created to walk with trust, to take each step with certainty that Allah has already planned the path ahead. Every breath, every delay, every detour has been written with purpose, even when you can't see it. When Prophet Abraham's AS was thrown into the fire, control was not an option. When Maryam AS stood alone in childbirth, control was not an option. When Musa's AS faced the sea, control was not an option. Yet in all those moments of helplessness, faith was present, and with faith came miracles. Because faith begins when control ends, and miracles begin where faith lives. Allah does not ask you to be fearless. He asks you to trust despite your fear. To believe that when you let go, He will hold you. To understand that sometimes the only way forward is through surrender. The heart that trusts Allah knows that every closed door hides a reason. Every delay carries wisdom, and every unanswered prayer is redirected mercy. You may not understand the why, but faith teaches you to rest in the ooh. You stop saying, why is this happening to me? And start saying, what is Allah teaching me through this? Faith transforms panic into patience, chaos into calm, confusion into clarity. It teaches you that your efforts matter, but they are never the source of your results. The source is always Allah. Letting go of control doesn't mean giving up effort. It means giving up attachment to outcome. You still work, you still strive, but you release the expectation that things must go your way. You understand that Allah's way is higher, wiser, and filled with mercy, even when wrapped in mystery. That realization softens the heart and humbles the soul. It reminds you that faith is not passive. It is active surrender. It is doing your part and trusting Allah with the rest. It is walking into uncertainty with certainty in Him. It is looking at what seems impossible and saying, Allah is enough for me. Your delays are divine redirections, because what feels like waiting to you is often working to Allah. There are moments in life when you pray sincerely, plan carefully, and give your best, yet nothing moves. The doors remain closed, opportunities slip away, and the silence of waiting feels endless. You start to wonder if Allah has forgotten you or if your prayers have gone unheard. But the truth is, every delay carries divine wisdom hidden within it. Allah does not withhold out of neglect. He withholds out of love, out of mercy, out of protection for what you cannot yet see. When something doesn't happen according to your timing, it is not denial, it is direction. Allah is not saying no. He is saying not yet, or sometimes even, I have something better. Delays are not punishments. They are pauses of preparation. Sometimes your heart is not ready for what you're asking for. Sometimes the path you're begging to walk would harm you in ways you don't yet understand. Sometimes the very thing you think you want would distract you from what you truly need, closeness to Allah. So He slows you down. He stops you. He redirects you. And while it feels like stagnation, it's actually transformation. Allah is building strength, patience, and faith within you. He is polishing your soul so that when His blessing arrives, you can hold it with gratitude and maturity. Look at the prophets and how their stories were filled with divine delays. Yusuf, A.S., was imprisoned for years before becoming a ruler. Musa as wandered in the desert before leading his people to freedom. Even the Prophet Muhammad waited 13 years in Mecca before being granted victory in Medina. Their delays were not defeats, they were divine training grounds. Each period of waiting was shaping them for the purpose they were destined to fulfill. Allah could have granted their requests instantly, but He chose the slower route because He wanted to strengthen their hearts before expanding their circumstances. The same applies to you. What you call a delay, Allah calls development. When you face a closed door, it's easy to feel frustration and confusion. But faith teaches you to pause and reflect. Maybe that door was never meant to open. Maybe behind it was something that would have broken you. Allah says in the Quran, perhaps you dislike something which is good for you and like something which is bad for you. Allah knows while you do not know. Surah Al-Baqarah 2:216. Every time you face rejection, every time something slips away from your hands, remind yourself that Allah is seeing what you cannot see. He is redirecting you from what you want toward what you need. When you begin to trust that your delays are not detours, but divine designs, peace replaces panic. The waiting becomes sacred because you know Allah is near. The silence becomes healing because you understand that every unanswered prayer is an answer in disguise. Even when nothing seems to move, Allah is moving everything for you behind the scenes. Every delay has meaning. Every pause has purpose. You might not understand it now, but one day you will look back and say, if it hadn't been delayed, I wouldn't have grown this much. So when life feels like it's on hold, remind your heart that Allah's timing is never late. His clock does not tick according to human impatience. He delays to protect you from harm, to prepare you for blessings, and to position you exactly where you're meant to be. Waiting with faith turns delay into devotion. It transforms uncertainty into trust. It allows your soul to rest knowing that Allah's wisdom is always at work. Even in the stillness of waiting, peace is found in surrender, not in struggle, because the soul was never designed to carry the weight of control. Every time you try to force what isn't written, every time you hold on to what Allah is asking you to let go of, your heart becomes heavy. You begin to feel the exhaustion of wrestling with destiny, of fighting what is beyond your reach. True peace arrives the moment you stop fighting and start trusting. The moment you whisper, "Why Allah? I leave it to you," is the moment your heart begins to breathe again. Surrender does not mean weakness. It means wisdom. The wisdom of knowing that only Allah can handle what your limited heart cannot. The world teaches us to fight for everything, to chase, to compete, to control. But faith teaches us to release. The calm heart is not the one that has everything it wants. It is the one that accepts everything Allah has written. The struggle of control comes from fear. Fear that things will fall apart if you don't hold them together. But when you truly believe that Allah is Al-Qadir, the all-powerful, you realize that nothing in your life depends on your grip. Everything depends on His will. You begin to understand that peace is not found in trying to manage the storm, but in trusting the one who commands the winds. When you surrender, you don't lose your strength, you find it. Because surrender in Islam is not giving up. It's giving in to the one who knows best. It's the quiet strength of a heart that says, I will do my part and I will leave the rest to you. The Prophet taught us that no soul will ever be burdened beyond what it can bear. Yet we burden ourselves more than Allah ever does. We burden ourselves with overthinking, with fear of the future, with clinging to people and plans. We forget that one who writes our story already knows how it ends, and that every chapter, even the painful ones, has purpose. The heart finds calm when it stops trying to solve what only Allah can resolve. You can spend your nights worrying, or you can spend them in sujud. One will drain you, the other will heal you. The heart that surrenders knows that no loss is random, no delay is wasted, and no hardship is meaningless. Every experience is either a test of patience or a gift of growth. When you let go of the need to control, you make space for divine control. And that space becomes sacred. It becomes the place where peace resides. Think about the ocean. When you fight the waves, you drown faster. But when you let yourself float, the same waves carry you. Life works the same way. When you stop fighting Allah's decree, His decree begins to carry you. You start to see the beauty hidden in what once felt bitter. You start to feel gratitude for what once felt unbearable. That shift from resistance to surrender is where peace is born. Surrender is not a passive state. It is an active choice to trust. It is waking up each morning with effort and ending each night with reliance. It is doing what you can and leaving the outcome in Allah's hands. It is understanding that sometimes unanswered prayers are answered in better ways. It is knowing that Allah's silence is not absence, it's preparation. The soul that surrenders stops asking, "Why me?" and begins asking, "What is Allah teaching me through this?" That question transforms pain into purpose. Peace is not the absence of problems, it is the presence of trust. It is knowing that even when everything feels uncertain, Allah's plan is certain. It is realizing that the same Lord who brought you through yesterday will carry you through today. When you stop struggling against destiny and start flowing with it, you discover that the calm you've been searching for was never out there. It was waiting inside your surrender. Allah's plan is always working, even in silence, because the unseen realm of His mercy is far more active than the eyes can ever witness. There are seasons in life when everything feels motionless, when your prayers seem to echo back unanswered, and your heart grows weary of waiting. You look around and nothing appears to change. The situation stays the same, the struggle continues, and silence becomes your companion. Yet in that silence, Allah is doing more for you than you can imagine. His plan doesn't stop moving just because you can't see it. The absence of noise is not the absence of progress. It is the space where miracles are quietly being shaped. Sometimes Allah hides His work from you to strengthen your faith in the unseen. Faith is not believing when everything is visible. It is believing when there is no visible sign at all. The most powerful test of trust is to keep walking when the path looks still, to keep praying when the heavens seem quiet, to keep believing that Allah is making a way even when every door looks closed. His silence is not His neglect. It is His wisdom. It is in the unseen pauses of life that your soul learns patience, humility, and surrender. If you could see what Allah is preparing for you behind the scenes, your heart would fall into prostration from gratitude alone. When Yusuf's A.S. sat in the darkness of the well, he couldn't see the divine plan that would later raise him to power. When Musa's AAS was placed in a river as an infant, his mother couldn't see the plan that would return him safely and make him a prophet. When Maryam's AS stood alone in pain, she couldn't see the plan that would make her the mother of Isa AS. In all these moments, there was silence, no explanation, no immediate rescue, no clear sign. Yet Allah's plan was unfolding perfectly. The same is true for you. What feels like stillness in your life is often divine movement in disguise. The human heart struggles with silence because it craves control. It wants signs, answers, and clarity. But Allah teaches faith through the unseen. He teaches you to trust the process even when you cannot trace it. When you feel forgotten, remind yourself that Allah is never inactive. The very breath in your lungs, the rise and fall of your heartbeat, the people you meet, the delays you experience, all are threads being woven into your destiny. Allah's plan doesn't only work in the big moments, it works in every subtle detail you overlook. Silence is often the greatest mercy because it forces reflection. It brings you back to your knees. It teaches you to seek peace in remembrance rather than in outcomes. When you can no longer see progress, Allah is inviting you to see Him, to remember that the same Lord who parted the sea, healed hearts, and turned pain into purpose is the same Lord working quietly in your story right now. Sometimes He removes the noise so that you can hear His whisper, and in that whisper, you find the reassurance that you are never alone. Allah's timing is not measured by human clocks. What feels like a delay to you is perfect alignment to Him. He aligns hearts, events, and moments in ways that only become clear later. One day, when the silence ends and His plan becomes visible, you will look back and realize that He was never absent. He was orchestrating every detail, preparing every step, and protecting you from what you didn't know could harm you. So when life feels quiet, when prayers seem unanswered, and when progress feels slow, remember that Allah is still working, moving mountains for you, even when the world seems still. Let go of the how and focus on the woo. Because the moment you try to calculate every possibility, you step into a realm that belongs only to Allah. The human mind constantly seeks answers. How will this work? When will it happen? How will things change? But faith begins when you stop demanding the blueprint and start trusting the builder. Life is not meant to be figured out in advance. It's meant to be lived with reliance. The how belongs to Allah, and the woo, the one who controls every detail of existence, has never failed. Every time you obsess over the how, you weigh your heart down with worry. But when you return your focus to the ooh, you begin to breathe again, knowing that the one who manages the universe can certainly manage your life. Every story of divine intervention in history began with someone who didn't know how it would work, but trusted who was in control. When Musa's AS stood before the sea, he didn't know how it would part. When Maryam's AS was told she would conceive Isa AS, she didn't know how that could happen. When Ibrahim's AS was thrown into the fire, he didn't know how he would survive. The how was hidden, but the woo was constant. Allah was there, turning impossibility into ease, turning fear into faith, and turning trials into triumphs. Their stories are reminders that your duty is not to calculate outcomes, but to cultivate trust. The same Lord who carried them through carries you now. The obsession with how is rooted in the illusion of control. You think that if you can predict the path, you can protect yourself from pain. But the truth is, no amount of planning can replace the wisdom of divine timing. Sometimes Allah conceals the how, because if you knew the entire path, you might lose courage to walk it. Sometimes He hides the steps so you can rely on Him for each one. Every delay, every twist, every unexpected turn is part of a map drawn by the one who knows the destination better than you know the direction. When you focus on the ooh, your heart finds peace even when your circumstances are uncertain. You stop asking, how will I get through this? And start saying, Allah will make a way. You stop seeking control and start seeking connection. You stop chasing outcomes and start chasing the one who holds outcomes in His hands. Faith doesn't remove uncertainty. It anchors you in trust despite it. The Prophet Abe once said, if you were to rely upon Allah with true reliance, He would provide for you as He provides for the birds. They go out hungry in the morning and return full in the evening. The birds do not know how they will find sustenance. They simply move, trusting the one who feeds them every day. Letting go of the how is an act of humility. It's a recognition that your understanding is limited and Allah's wisdom is infinite. It frees you from the anxiety of trying to control what was never yours to control. When you trust the who, your prayers become lighter, your nights more peaceful, your efforts more sincere. You start to do your best without the desperation of needing to know how it will unfold. You live with the calm assurance that Allah never leaves a believer's effort unrewarded, never allows a sincere heart to be lost, and never writes a story without purpose. When you stop worrying about how, you make room for who, you open space for divine intervention. You invite serenity into your struggle and clarity into your confusion. You begin to see that every unanswered question is an opportunity to deepen your relationship with the one who answers all questions. And when the time is right, Allah reveals the how in ways far greater than you ever imagined. Tawakkul turns fear into freedom because it is the art of placing your heart in Allah's hands while moving through life with trust. Every human being experiences fear. Fear of loss, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of the unknown. It is natural to feel afraid, but faith teaches that fear does not have to control you. Tawakkul, or complete reliance on Allah, is what transforms that fear into freedom. It is not the absence of fear, but the ability to move through it with peace, knowing that whatever happens is written with divine wisdom. The heart that truly relies on Allah understands that outcomes are not in human control, and therefore there is no reason to live in constant worry. When you practice tawakkul, you are no longer enslaved by the fear of what could go wrong because you trust the one who never does wrong. You realize that your provision, your success, your safety, and your happiness are all sustained by Allah, not by people, not by circumstances, not by your own strength. This realization liberates you from anxiety. It frees you from chasing validation, from overthinking outcomes, from trying to manipulate life into fitting your plans. You begin to walk lighter, speak calmer, and rest easier because you know that Allah's care for you is constant even when the world feels uncertain. Fear often grows when you rely too much on yourself. The more you believe everything depends on you, the heavier life feels. But when you rely on Allah, the burden shifts. You still work, you still strive, but your heart no longer carries the unbearable weight of control. You do your part and trust that Allah will take care of the rest. That's why tawakkul brings freedom. It allows you to live responsibly but peacefully, to act with effort but without attachment. You realize that even if things don't go your way, they always go Allah's way, and His way is always better. The Prophet embodied tawakkul in every aspect of his life. When he hid in the cave during migration, surrounded by danger, he told Abu Bakr R.A., "Do not be afraid. Indeed, Allah is with us." That was not denial of fear. It was mastery of it through faith. Tawakkul does not mean ignoring reality. It means seeing reality through the lens of belief. It means knowing that the presence of Allah is greater than any threat, any hardship, or any obstacle. When you live with this awareness, fear begins to fade. It loses its grip because your heart no longer depends on worldly stability, but on divine constancy. Tawakkul gives you freedom from the illusion of control. It allows you to step into the unknown without panic, to face uncertainty with calm, and to accept loss with dignity. You stop seeing challenges as punishments and start seeing them as invitations to trust deeper. You stop measuring your worth by worldly outcomes and start measuring it by your closeness to Allah. When you rely on people, disappointment is inevitable. When you rely on yourself, exhaustion is guaranteed. But when you rely on Allah, peace becomes your companion. Fear imprisons the soul, but tawakkul opens its doors. It teaches you that no harm can touch you unless Allah wills it, and no blessing can miss you if it's written for you. That truth gives you courage to live freely, to love sincerely, to take risks with faith instead of anxiety. You no longer walk with hesitation, but with quiet confidence that Allah is guiding your steps, even when you don't see the full path. When tawakkul fills the heart, worry has no room left to grow. You begin to breathe again, not because life becomes easy, but because you realize that you are never alone in facing it. Every moment of surrender becomes a moment of strength. Every act of trust becomes a form of worship. And in that trust, fear melts into freedom, because the one who relies on Allah walks through life knowing that nothing can go wrong when the one who controls everything is guiding the way